This is the Home and Above coffee maker. It is designed to make cold brew coffee specifically. And if you're familiar with the Hario Mizudashi, this is a very similar concept. It uses the immersion method, which basically means you steep your ground coffee in room temperature water or cold water, and after a designated amount of time, typically about 8 hours, you will have cold brew coffee ready to go, capable of being poured directly from this carafe right here. So let's just take a look at the components. We've got an all stainless steel lid. We have our grounds chamber here, which is a perforated, almost like a sieve cylinder. Again, all stainless steel and a rubber gasket around the edge. And then an all glass carafe. And there are some markings for 8 ounces, 16 ounces, 24 ounces, and 32 ounces. So a typical immersion cold brew ratio would be about 8:1. So if you had 1 ounce of coffee, you would have 8 ounces of water. 2 ounces of coffee, 16 ounces of water. And so this kind of, the labels here coincide with the different amounts of coffee you can use. The only issue is that the cylinder doesn't go all the way to the bottom. It goes to about the 16 ounce mark. So we're gonna need to use at least 3 ounces of coffee here, because 24 ounces, if we're gonna do an 8:1, 3 times 8 would be 24, and that's basically the only level that we've got here to basically get the coffee extracted. So I'm actually going to do a full 4 ounces of coffee to get up to the 32 ounce mark right there. And just to be thorough, we'll use a scale to make sure we're using accurate amounts of water and coffee. But I will show you that that might not necessarily be true. So I'll get right to brewing. All right, so I use my cruve for sifting purposes, so we can get a consistent coarse grind. And so this is the first thing you'll need, is ground coffee. And I'm using pretty coarse grind here. And the reason I'm using a coarse grind is because this grounds container is not going to be using any paper filters. As such, if we have too many fines in our coffee, we're going to be getting sediment in our cold brew, and we don't want that. So let's see if we have 4 ounces of coffee here. So in the interest of making as little of a mess as possible, I think it's a good idea, if you've got an AeroPress funnel or something, to add it to the top there. And that's what I'm going to do here, and then I'll pour in the coffee. Right. And that's good to see. So it looks like 4 ounces would have probably been a little bit too much. I don't know necessarily if it would have gone to the top or not, but 3 ounces gets us almost to the top. So we've got 3 ounces of coffee. Let's pour in, what would that be, 24 ounces of water. So let's see if it goes up to the line here. My hypothesis is that it won't. So that's 24 ounces of water. Now, the problem with this is that we've still got some ground coffee at the top that isn't getting saturated right now. So using an 8:1 ratio is not going to work. So let's see what we get to for full saturation. about there. So 30, 32. So it says 32 on the marker, but in reality it's a little more than 30 ounces. So again, that's 3 ounces of coffee, 30 ounces of water, 10-to-1 ratio is, I guess, the lowest you can get. So if you want to do an 8-to-1 ratio, you're not going to really have that option here because the water just won't reach a high enough level. So I would say that for sure that's a downside. It doesn't give you as much flexibility, but 10-to-1 is still good, and you can do even more diluted ratios. So now all you do is let it sit. I'm gonna let it sit for about 8 hours, and then I'll show you the final result. And one more thing, I like to keep it out of the fridge because I found that the extraction is a little bit better when it's not being refrigerated. Of course, after the brewing process, you can refrigerate it to keep it cold, but for now, we're just gonna leave it out room temperature. Okay, 8 hours have passed, and it's time to finally drink our cold brew. You can see it has a nice dark color now. It's ready to go. Pours nicely. Here's a look. Let's take a sip. Tastes good. And if you want, don't forget to add ice. You can also add a little bit of milk or cream, whatever. Give it a stir. And enjoy. Cheers. So let me quickly tell you what I like and don't like about the Home and Above cold brew coffee maker. First off, we'll start with the pros, the things that I do like. I love the materials that are being used here, all glass, stainless steel, no plastic parts. I think that's the kind of thing you want to see when you're looking into getting a coffee maker of high quality. And it also helps with the aesthetics. I think that it's really good looking and slim. It doesn't take up a lot of space, could fit in a fridge very easily. As far as what I don't like, the materials kind of play hand in hand with that. It is not going to be the most durable coffee maker because it is glass, so you do have to be very careful when you're cleaning this. The glass isn't particularly thick. I'd say it's thinner than a Chemex, and for something that's more than $25, it would be a shame to break this thing in your sink. And that ties in with another thing that I don't really like about this coffee maker, which is that it's kind of difficult to clean. I mean, you can't really scoop into that grounds chamber too easily. You could stick a spoon in there, but there's going to be a lot of leftover grounds, so really you have to rinse it out pretty thoroughly, probably scrub it with a brush, and same thing goes with inside the carafe. It doesn't have a wide opening, so you're going to need a bottle brush if you really want to get in there and give it a deep cleaning. So cleaning ease is not going to be a very high score here, nor would durability. But on the other side of the spectrum, the aesthetics and materials are top notch. As far as the coffee quality goes, that's gonna depend 100% on what coffee you're using, how good your water is, as well as the grind you're using, and it depends on too many different variables. What I will say is that the versatility of this thing is not as high as, say, some of the other cold brew coffee makers out there, in that you're going to be limited in the ratios that you can experiment with. Again, I mentioned that you can't do an 8-to-1, which is a pretty standard ratio for a cold brew. And at the same time, you can't really use paper filters here, so your filtration is going to be pretty limited. So if you're not using a grinder that can go coarse and consistent, then you might get some pretty icky sediment in your cold brew. So the lack of versatility kind of affects the overall coffee quality. But again, if you have the necessary tools to kind of get yourself a consistent coarse grind, that's not going to be too much of a factor, especially if you're using good coffee and water. So overall, I would say that this is a great alternative to the Mizudashi or some of the other popular immersion cold brew coffee makers out there, such as the Toddy, which is plastic, and the Filtron, which is also plastic. The only issue here is that you're not going to be getting as much cold brew concentrate as you would from those coffee makers. So this is a small batch coffee maker. That could be a good thing or a bad thing for you. It's probably going to be a bad thing for most people, because cold brew concentrate does keep for a pretty good amount of time. I'd say at least 2 weeks in the fridge, and it's still going to be pretty good quality. So this isn't the kind of cold brew coffee maker you would want to buy if you want to make large batches of the stuff. It's really just for, say, a couple doses per 3 ounces of coffee. So you're not going to get a lot of yield. Anyways, feel free to ask questions in the comments. If you've tried the Home and Above cold brew coffee maker, just leave your review below in the comments, or you can go directly to the written review, which is linked in the description, and give a thorough rating and review in the comments. I'm sure other readers and watchers would greatly appreciate that. So thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you love coffee. Thanks so much.